a portion of the meeting where the chair will designate that specific time. I think that's pretty much sums it up, and I will hand it over to Chair Benjamin to officially start tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, October the 13th, 2020. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hernandez?
I am present.
Commissioner Holt?
Here.
Vice Chair Reddick?
Here.
Chair Benjamin?
I am here. I recognize Commissioner Polgar appears to be in the meeting as well.
And Commissioner Polgar, I apologize.
Here.
All right. So we have all planning commissioners present this evening.
Thank you. So the first item of business is consideration of the draft minutes. We have two of them tonight. The first one is for October the 25th. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
September 20th.
I'm sorry, August 25, 2020 is what I see.
Right,
in the,
August 25th.
So we'll start with that one.
I'd move to approve.
Before you do, if I may, I just wanted to point out in the 825 minutes, there was in the planning commission communications, there was a summary. One of the bullet items said the commission encourages the city to be aggressive in working with agencies to address vegetation fuel load in and around our surrounding areas. Don't remember it, not disputing it. If we said that was probably, can anybody help me with that?
Commissioner Hernandez spoke of it that evening.
That sounds like something I would have said at that meeting.
Okay. I guess my only comment would be I'm not sure that they should be voiced as the voice of the commission rather than comments of commissioners. So perhaps it's not that I advocate massive uncontrolled fuel loads, but we weren't making any decisions with respect to policy. So my only suggestion would be that that we discussed, or something a little bit softer. What do you think?
It's just like that's in the section about agenda items of interest.
It's in the Planning Commission communications section. So my only, it's just that we didn't make a policy decision as a commission to do this. It's not that I think the issue is incorrect or irrelevant. It's just that it's framed as a decision, and I'm looking for language that's a little bit softer than decision. Jill, do you have any suggestion?
I think, Chair Benjamin, thank you for asking. I think you hinted right at what I would have suggested, and I apologize for us overstating. This is a tricky section because we are trying to capture your discussion, but this does suggest that it was an agreed upon decision. This is not an agendized item. So yes, the commission discussed fuel vegetation management, and we could leave it at that. And if the commission would like items that come up during commission communications to come back onto an agenda, we can do that as well. And then we can capture the broader discussion and any motions that you would make as a commission as a whole.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt the motion. Vice Chair Reddick, if you have the floor, if you want to continue with a motion.
No, I think Commissioner Holt was about to make a motion regarding the minutes.
I beg your pardon, sir.
I made a motion to approve, and I would agree with those amendments.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please. Bridget?
Commissioner Polgar?
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Reddick?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Benjamin. I'm sorry, Chair Benjamin. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Yes, thank you.
Motion
The
passes.
next item of for us to consider are the minutes of September 22nd, 2020.
Yeah.
I also had comments about that, but I want to invite my colleagues if anyone had any changes, additions, or corrections. The only comment I had was with respect to the Champs-Élysées project. There was a reference in the text that the comments were with respect to water courses or streams were about Pullman rather than Roosevelt. And I just want to clarify, I distinctly remember Commissioner Hernandez and Commissioner Polgar were speaking specifically to some of the concerns about Roosevelt. And, we heard comments about where the water was coming from, but I wanted to be sure that that the minutes reflected that we had not dismissed our concerns with respect to one stream rather than the other. Am I remembering that, Commissioner Hernandez and Commissioner Polgar? Rick, you have the floor.
I'm just making sure. Yeah, I think that's right.
So Chair Benjamin,
yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, finish.
Commissioner Polgar?
Sorry, my phone connection was bad for a second. Can you point out where you're talking about? Because I yes, I recall what you're saying. And I agree that we were talking about Roosevelt. Do you mind pointing out where you mean? Because I missed that.
Yes, in the Planning Commission discussion, there is a section, let's see, I will find it for you.
I have it here, Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you.
Yeah, page 4 of 7 of your September 22nd minutes. It's page 10 of the packet. Under the heading about a quarter of the way down on the page, Roosevelt/Naples watercourse, flooding and erosion. The first bullet point, there's a couple sentences. This is in the section of the Planning Commission's discussion. And the first few sentences under this bullet point are about your discussion as a commission about this water course. There's a final sentence there that staff, we put this in because the public comment came up differently and we were trying to be clear about this, and it came out actually in your discussion, which is why we put it here. We noted that public comments, and you did as well, that public comments were about Pullman, but you were talking about Roosevelt and Naples, which was pertinent to the project. So if there's a way to better clarify what we tried to clarify in these minutes, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, my suggestion would be perhaps just to delete the last sentence. I think that I do remember the conversation, and we did receive public comment that Roosevelt wasn't overflowing banks, that Pullman was. We didn't make any findings of fact. I see that it was with respect to public comment here. I can't remember. It seemed to me that someone had expressed some concerns in public about Roosevelt, but perhaps I'm not remembering it correctly. Ultimately, it's not a finding of fact. It's just a note about what the public thought. For some reason, I thought it might have appeared more broadly. So I will not dwell on it. If the staff doesn't recall anyone commenting about water in Roosevelt.
Can I just clarify that I'll be honest, what I thought when the public comment happened, I thought it was about Pullman Avenue.
They were talking about water coming down Pullman Avenue. And so I was just, because I wanted to remember, and I just was looking at the map of that area.
I misremembered. It is worthwhile, because I didn't recall anybody talking about Pullman watercourse in the public comment. I actually thought that they talked about with respect to the street just further to the east. So,
I think that's right, actually. Yeah, I think that's right.
Maybe the safest thing to do would just not frame the public comment as being specifically about either water course. Do you think deleting that sentence might be constructive? Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move that we approve the minutes, but with that change of removing that sentence that we discussed.
I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Commissioner Hernandez. Another roll call, please, Bridget.
Commissioner Polgar?
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
Abstain. I was not present for the meeting.
That's right. Correct. Vice Chair Reddick?
Yes.
And Chair Benjamin?
Yes. Thank you for putting up with my nitpicking. I appreciate it.
That's good.
The next item on our agenda is the public comment section of our meeting. This is a time when any member of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission on an item which is not on our agenda tonight is welcome to do so. Any item which is not on our agenda tonight. So, Bridget, do we have anyone requesting to address the commission during the public comment period?
We have none.
In that case, I will open and close the public comment section and move on to the next item of our agenda tonight, which is the public hearing section. We have a application for a CDP at Carissima and Mill Street. And I'm imagining that Scott will be bringing this item to us tonight. So Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Nice to see you all this evening. As mentioned, it's a project downtown and mixed-use project. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. I have a little quick PowerPoint presentation to convey some information.
Perfect.
Okay, can everyone see this okay?
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
You're gonna need, there you go. You got it. Never mind. Continue.
Bandwidth is a little slow at my house. You have to bear with me a little bit. Okay, moving on. So this slide shows a aerial photograph, best resolution I was able to quickly find on the internet from 2018, showing the subject property. And as you can see, it's an infill site downtown. And the surrounding area is predominantly built out. It contains several historic buildings, including the residence that's on the site. This slide shows a photograph of, for the most part, what the site looks like today. And the proposed project includes a 2-story mixed-use building, and the ground floor would include 2 commercial spaces, 2 separate tenant spaces, and the second story would include 5 new apartments, 4 of which would be 2-bedroom and 1 one-bedroom unit. Total floor area would be around 9,500 square feet, and 1 off-street parking space per dwelling unit would be provided. New curb gutter and sidewalk, as well as crosswalks, would be installed as part of this project, as well as extending the existing street trees along the frontages. The storm drain along the Carissima Street frontage would also be upgraded and improved to improve the drainage along that corner. And bicycle parking for both the retail or the commercial and residential uses would be installed on site. The existing home would remain as is and continue to be preserved as you've seen happen in the past few years. As mentioned, the permits requested include a coastal development permit, use permit for residential, since it's off the Heritage Main Street, architectural review, and a parking exception. far as the background history, the home on the site was constructed in 1905, and the background research that we've received, it appears that it's continued to be used as a house from when it was constructed up to today. So that's kind of interesting. As far as the project, a study session was held by the Planning Commission on July 14th of this year. Planning Commission gave us some valuable feedback on the project. And with that, we presented the project to our Architectural Advisory Committee on August 20th, where the design of the proposed building was evaluated. The Architectural Advisory Committee had some minor suggestions. Most of the conversation revolved around the required handrails for ADA access. The big change that the applicant made after the AAC meeting was that they've dedicated the one-bedroom unit to strictly ADA access. So they're going to have that set aside for ADA access. So that was the major change. And then story poles, as you see, were installed because of the parking exception that's been requested. And as far as noticing, we did post the required notice in the HMB review. The site was posted, and we mailed out notices to all the neighbors within 300 feet. We also did some courtesy noticing for both the Planning Commission study session as well as the Architectural Advisory Committee. And to date, I have not received any feedback on this project from any of the neighbors, any suggestions or even, positive criticism or anything. So that's to date. A few items for the Planning Commission to consider: conformance for the general plan, local coastal plan, land use plan, the downtown specific plan, and zoning. Now, as far as the proposed plans, this is the block plan that shows the existing buildings hashed around the subject property, as well as the configuration of the new on-street parking. And then this slide shows the proposed site plan that includes the existing house on the site, as well as the commercial footprint and then the covered on off-street parking. Here's the first floor plan. And keep in mind that the second floor actually cantilevers over quite a bit over the first, including the driveway aisle on the east side, as well as a covered walkway in the front entry to the commercial space number 1. And then this slide shows the second floor plan with the 5 apartments. The one bedroom is located off the southeast corner here. And what I tried to do is line up the scale so you can see how much the second story cantilevers over the first. This slide shows the proposed north elevation that would face Mill Street. And then the west elevation that faces Carissima Street. Notice that the existing house is excluded from this elevation. And then as far as the landscape plan, the actual space that's available for landscaping is fairly minimal. But they did add a rain garden here off of the 5th parking space that would collect much of the stormwater and on site. A fairly detailed preliminary utility plan was also included in the plan set. And our engineering staff has worked closely with the applicant to make for certain that this works out okay and is acceptable for Public Works. And this slide shows more detail on the off-street improvements, or that should say on-street. Sorry about that. But you'll notice that new crosswalks, as well as sidewalks, ramp, and new tree wells are included. And then the new storm drain replacement would take place within this area that has historically seen some flooding concerns. So the idea is this would fix that we've received feedback on in the past. Now, as far as the off-street parking, Planning Commission worked really hard on our new parking ordinance, and they are asking for the 20% reduction since this is a mixed-use project, as well as the residential guest parking waiver, and we think that makes sense. They're still shy a little, what would normally be required for the off-street parking. They are suggesting the use of 5 excess parking that's currently at 655 Miramonte Street, and an agreement would be required as we've included in the conditions of approval. And then with that, they're still shy 2 spaces, so that's what the parking exception would include. And we have included the draft findings in Exhibit A within the resolution. And then as far as the historic resource evaluation, they had that prepared by a qualified architectural historian. And no impact to the historic resource on the site was identified within the report. And the architectural historian also concluded that the project meets the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and that there wouldn't be an impact for the proposed, by constructing the new mixed-use project on the site. And with that, we feel that a CEQA exemption would be appropriate. And then just to kind of sum things up, a couple of things for the Planning Commission to consider. Use compatibility. Does the mixed use project make sense for this site? And we feel that it is consistent with the surrounding developments. The project appears to be compliant with the downtown specific plan, including preservation of historical buildings and establishing of mixed use development. It would provide a friendly streetscape for pedestrians and mesh with the project that was recently approved by the Planning Commission catty-corner from the site. In conclusion, we suggest that the Planning Commission provide the applicant for an opportunity to speak, which I think he's logged in this evening. Take public comment and evaluate any concerns that are brought up, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Would you like us to ask questions before the applicant speaks, or would the applicant prefer to speak before we ask clarifying questions?
Bridget, do you see the applicant logged in this evening?
Yes, I have the applicant, the architect, and the contractor on. See if Brian.
Let's use the public hearing section for their comments, and perhaps some questions will come up that they will have a chance to address. That's probably an efficient use of time. Okay. And my recollection is that's how we usually do it.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, does anyone have any clarifying questions that they'd like to ask prior to the public hearing? Commissioner Holt.
Just real quick, wondering, Scott, so I drove by, I saw the story pulls up. and saw the site, and I'm just wondering if thus far you have gotten much feedback from neighboring property owners, business owners, others, if you've heard anything in response to the story polls.
No, I really haven't. Normally, I'll at least get a phone call or an email, just some questions. And with this project, I have not received any feedback at all. So.
Commissioner Polgar.
I had a couple minor things. One is just to make sure that I understood in terms of the historic residence, there's no changes happening to it. It's basically maybe the only thing might be that the trees in front or the I guess what do you call it, like a, sorry, I had a very bad headache today, so I'm a little bit struggling with words right now. The sidewalk, that's it, in front would change. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they're a little bit in the back of the house, but that at an early phase, we suggested that the applicant reach out to an architectural historian to get feedback on how the proposed project, would affect the historic resource on the site. And my experiences in the past, a lot of times architectural historians will suggest changes, but that was not the case on this. They found that the proposed project would actually contribute to the historic resource on the site.
Okay, great. And then the other question, and I should know this, I'm just really tired right now and I don't remember. How would in terms of the apartments, what would be the requirements in terms of renting? Like they wouldn't be short-term rental apartments, would they? Or is there no restriction on that?
That's a good question. That hasn't come up. No, these would be long-term rentals, and they would need to apply in order, for example, if they wanted to have short-term hotel room, kitchenette type of experience, that is not what's being proposed here. That this would have to, if I'm not certain, have to be presented back to the Planning Commission to convert some.
Can I just ask for some follow-up on that, maybe from Jill?
I'm sorry, Brian, absolutely.
How would that relate to our short-term rental ordinance, or what we've done there? What restrictions would be in place regarding short-term rentals for this space? Would somebody be able to just move in there and short-term rental it, or would they need to go through an additional process? I know we've talked a lot about short-term rentals. I'm just wondering how it relates.
Through the chair, let me try to cover a little bit of this. So, as you know, the city does not have a short-term rental ordinance from the perspective of your zoning code. We do have requirements for short-term rentals to be getting a business license, because it's kind of like a home occupation. They are also required to pay and so get involved in setting themselves up to do so, the transient occupancy tax, or the TOT. But we don't have a land use review of them right now, or any other kinds of limitations. So your staff has drafted an ordinance that we're looking forward to finishing up and bringing back to you. And we really wouldn't have significant restrictions on these particular units in the downtown area, because even if it was something more involved as lodging, that's a permitted use in the commercial downtown mixed use district. So this is a bit different than looking at what might be going on out in a residential single family neighborhood, for example. Now, that said, I think it will be helpful to hear from the applicant about their intention for these units and how they'll be used and what really there's good marketability for rental units downtown for long-term tenancies as homes.
You're muted, Jimmy, but I was just going to say thank you. That answers my question for now.
Thank you. You read my mind. That was what I was asking. I carefully muted myself to ask. Commissioner Hernandez, any questions at this time?
I was looking at the project and I noticed what appears to me as a layperson to be a very small amount of storage for waste. Is there a standard size waste receptacle for a mixed commercial residential building? It just seems like that doesn't seem like it's sufficient space. Again, as a layperson looking at this, so I'm just questioning, do we have the right amount of on-site storage for waste and recycling?
Yes, we have looked at that for we have an ordinance that requires a certain amount of space per unit and per square footage of commercial space. And yes, it does meet that requirement.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Vice Chair Reddick, any questions at this time?
Yeah, I had two, I think. Thank you for all this, Scott. My first question is, the plans show in the southeast corner of the property, immediately east of the 5 parking places, the plans seem to show a stairwell there. Is that something to do with the shops on Main Street, or what are we looking at there?
So the stairwell actually provides access from the parking area up to the 2nd story.
So does the 2nd story overhang the parking places then?
Correct. It cantilevers over the parking spaces.
I see. Yes, I think you told me that, and I apologize for not digesting it better. The other question, I applaud the amount of street trees that the applicant has agreed to put in here. Is there something about Chinese elm that makes it a favorable tree? I know it's not native, but you do see it used a lot in such situations. Is there something about it that makes it a good choice here?
Well, for one, several Chinese elm exist along Mill Street. So the idea was to extend the elm down Mill. We also had some feedback from our Architectural Advisory Committee on species. So that was part of the direction. But in general, they tend to not get too big. So I think that was also the motivation on the species selection.
There's a couple other characteristics of them that we think are really nice to Half Moon Bay. Obviously, any city, we're happy to have a street tree that doesn't cause sidewalk damage, and these perform pretty well in that environment. But they also are semi-evergreen, and they provide, they have a really light canopy. We don't need heavy shade. In this cooler, typically a cooler climate, but you do get nice shade in the summer, but it's a good look all 12 months of the year, but with a nice amount of canopy density.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you for that.
I just had a couple of questions, if I might, Scott. I know that one of the findings that we make, of course, is that it has all of the available infrastructure, And I noted in the staff report that it said it was going to require, the sewer connections and the water connections beyond what it currently has. But I didn't see in the report, I think there was a reference that we have adequate capacity, but have they already acquired the permits? And in particular, since these are residences, these are non-priority water permits. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So with the exception of deed restricted affordable housing, residential is considered non-priority as far as water connections.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have what they need. That you're not suggesting we approve a project that doesn't have its water or sewer connections in place, right?
Yes, that's correct. So they would need to acquire that for as condition.
Okay. Then outside of the LCP, there's the of course there's the circulation element. I think that seems fine for downtown. I wonder about consistency with the housing element.
Scott, I'd
I
be
see
happy
Jill is
to.
stepping in.
Yeah, I'd be happy to cover this one if you don't mind. I've been doing a little extra research this week on housing elements. And we realized that we didn't put, I realized that we didn't put a finding in your report regarding consistency with the housing element of this project. This site is not one of the designated inventory sites in the housing element. It does not mean it's not an appropriate site for housing. What it does mean is that all these net new units, should the commission move forward with the project, would really help us cover some of the other sites in town where the densities that were anticipated in the housing element were actually not achieved. So this is, these are, for us, these are going to help our net when we get to the end of this housing element cycle. But I also want to note in combination with the existing home, you're looking at 6 units on about 10,000 square feet of land area, which is on the order of 26 units per acre. This is pretty close to the cap of density for our downtown district, which is close to 30 units to the acre. You'll see in our zoning code, we have 29 point some additional fraction as our limit. And this is a density that you have been using in our work on the land use plan. So I did want to put that to you that this density can be in 1 and 2 story structures, but in this case, it's with reduced parking or some cleverness about how to deal with parking in quite a few different ways. We do have a minimum density requirement for the R3 zoning district, and your draft land use plan was actually bringing forward a minimum density requirement for when mixed use projects come forward like this, and this would meet that. So it's just a few notes, and it's certainly consistent with housing element policy in your general plan. We would see nothing inconsistent about that. So we just thank you for the question.
And it has its measure Ds, right?
Yes.
I apologize.
Yes,
okay, very good. And then I want to display some, some unusually high ignorance here. With the ADA parking space, that is dedicated to one of the apartments. It's one of the residential parking spaces. Is that correct?
So the ADA space would be available if unoccupied for commercial use as well.
I see. So it's not it doesn't imply, somebody's got a buzz going. I don't know if that's me. Oh, much better. Thank you. So it doesn't have any ramifications for the need for consistent ADA thinking in the apartment complex. That was where I was about to go, and it sounds like there's no need.
That's correct.
Okay, colleagues, any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite the applicant to share his thoughts. You've heard some of the comments and questions of the commission. If there's something on that you want to touch on in addition to your other remarks, we'd certainly be happy to hear it in your brief discussions tonight. So, Bridget, when you're ready, happy to hear from the applicant if they're interested in speaking.
Okay, Brian is in our panel right now and he can speak right now.
Welcome, Brian.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Thanks. Hi, guys. I think staff kind of answered the questions as they came up, as I would have answered them. I mean, like the Chinese elm, and that's been a really good trip. I'm planting 3 in my house. They've done so well in the places we've had them. They're evergreen. They grow to about 25 feet about a year, and they stay very full. So, and they're not a dirty tree. Not a lot of leaves end up in the gutters and sewers. So we're happy with them. And they look good. I mean, drive by the sushi restaurant on Mill Street, you know, buy some sushi, help them out. And, but take a look, the trees there look pretty good there, I think, you know. So that is one of the minor elements. The handicap spot, I'd like us to find a resident who has a handicap placard to take that spot if that's available. And certainly that's going to get a priority. The goal is that these housing units are not overly expensive. You know, they're attainable. They're not overly large. They add 5 spots to downtown, and for us having a few other residential places for rent. The demand in Half Moon Bay is still very strong, you know, and especially when you can get a little bit cheaper, you know, when you can get under $3,000 in the $2,200, $2,400 range, which is where I think these would fall. There's people that need them, you know, and it's nice to live downtown. If any of everyone's ever lived in a village before, it's kind of nice. So I think we did a pretty good job on 719 Main Street. We got a lot of assistance from Jill and Scott, and I think we'd just like to try to do this one as a good building as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Bridget, are there other speakers? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Okay, so nobody else is open to speak unless the architect or the builder would like to?
So
see them raising their hand.
You do or do not?
I don't have anyone else.
All right. Going. Were there any written comments? It sounds like there weren't, but just to double check.
No.
Through the chair.
Yes, Commissioner Holt.
So I'm hoping, I know we generally don't engage in a conversation during public comment, but I was hoping to ask the applicant a question just regards to the intent about short-term rental versus long-term rental, and just, and there's no prejudgment here, but just asking just what the applicant's intent is for the rental space.
Great question. The public hearing is still open. Brian, if you're still with us.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hey, I love 5-year rent. I love 5-year tenants. We're not looking to flip this. That's too much work. The best tenant is someone like, we have a great tenant right now at 719 Main Street. He loves it. He says he intends to live there till he passes away. We just had someone move out of 701 Charisma, was there 5 years. He bought a house. That to us is the ideal tenant, you know. We're not in the hotel business.
Thank you.
Very good. Bridget, any other comments, written or hands up?
No, I see none.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for conversation. Colleagues?
Well, if I could, through the chair.
Yes.
I'll just start. I think I really appreciate the design. I think this looks like it's a really attractive addition to Main Street. I appreciate the applicant's comments. I actually don't know that I would necessarily have a problem with the units being used for short-term rentals, but I also am a strong supporter of using housing for housing, and recognize that we have a housing problem in Half Moon Bay. So I fully understand and take the applicant's word that it is a lot of work to manage and facilitate short-term rentals, and a lot easier to get somebody in there in the long term. So hearing that that's the intent, I think is great. More people downtown is more activation of our downtown spaces, and just helps us work towards that jobs housing balance and everything else. I think the mixed use component of it is beautiful and something that we strive for in our general plan and in all of our planning. And the architecture to me just seems to really not only fit with downtown, but will enhance downtown and bring people down onto that stretch and into the other block there. So I was really excited to see this. I'm fully in support, and I think it's a well-designed, well-planned project. I think staff has worked through the issues on the parking exceptions and other questions there, and I think it'll be a nice addition. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Holt. Any other thoughts from you, colleagues?
Commissioner Chair. So when I look at this lot, I've always thought there's such an opportunity here to fill this space and create an integrated feeling of a commercial downtown space. It just felt like a huge void. And I was always disappointed when I pull into the back of that little parking area there thinking, well, there should be something here more meaningful and more substantial. And I feel like this design accomplishes that. You've created a very sturdy commercial space with a very strong aesthetic. It's unique, but it incorporates many elements we find in structures throughout the downtown core. So, and I think it makes good use of the space. It contributes to the housing, and it fills that space. And it looks like a building, when it's done, that will have been there for 100 years. And it was part of the original Main Street or the core downtown. So I applaud the project, and I fully support it. And I have no other comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Commissioner Polgar.
I agree with my fellow commissioners on what they were just saying, and I just would add, with everything they just said, I really like this, and I would also add that I recognize the challenge of and the opportunity of having this historic residence and maintaining that, and also having a proposed project that fits well with it, and I think that's been accomplished, and I think that it definitely was quite a challenge. I remember the study session for this, and the parking was a challenge to figure out. And I think they've really done a great job with the efficiency of the space in terms of design, but also maintaining that historic residence is important. And so I think that's a key component. And I was really pleased to see how they've integrated it all together. So I'm very much in support of this and pleased about it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Reddick.
Well, I echo the positive comments that my three co-commissioners have made about the project and the architecture. I'm happy to see that there'll be attention fee of this project to the handling of stormwater in this intersection with the improved gutters. I think that's responsive to the input we heard from the neighbors at our July hearing. I think that the mixed use approach is very much in line with what our vision for downtown is, and the opportunity to make downtown even more vibrant and allow people to live near shopping and near the transit lines, and to bring in potentially more commercial businesses to thrive there is all a good thing. To me, it's an easy decision to grant the parking exceptions in order to realize the benefits of such a project. So I'm very positive about it.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add a couple of thoughts. I don't love parking exceptions in general. If we send them out this often, it makes me wonder why we have the parking restrict. You know, if this is the norm, we should be asking ourselves if the norm is what we want, because it erodes our ability to have an expectation. So, you know, I see a pattern developing. It seems like a lot of development. I seem to remember on 719, we had that creative solution involving the lot next door and the ability to lease some additional parking. But it always seems that we're having to struggle with this. It certainly isn't going to stop me from supporting the project. Likewise, you know, I got to say, when I saw the story poles, I was impressed. It's a tall building. It's massive. But I feel like I'm not the arbiter of architectural taste, and I'm encouraged by the comments from my colleagues about their sense of location and placement and how they feel it fits in. So I certainly do not intend to raise a fuss about that. Those were my only comments. Otherwise, I felt like it was, I appreciated the density. I feel like this is a worthwhile project. So if there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Polgar. I did not see your hand.
No, through the chair. I just wanted to, in terms of the parking exception, I did actually think this was a unique situation because of the presence of the historic residents. I mean, this is an impressive density that's being accomplished on this property. And so, but I feel like they really, they had to work, it's a challenge to work with maintaining that historic residence and keeping the look and feel appropriate for around it. And I think they accomplished that. So I didn't feel the same way. I totally understand what you're saying about the parking exceptions, but I felt like this was actually, it had some pretty extenuating circumstances as I was reviewing the project, but that's just offering an alternate opinion. That's all.
And I appreciate that, because it's, you know, at some point, if this happens frequently enough, people are going to say, how come them and not me? And having a record that shows what the extenuating circumstances are is certainly worthwhile. So I'm glad that you were persuaded by the effort to preserve that space. Well done. Any other comments? If not, is there a motion? Okay, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hernandez. Roll call vote, please, Bridget.
Okay. Commissioner Polgar?
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
Yes.
Vice Chair Reddick?
Yes.
And Chair Benjamin?
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes.
All right. It is time for us to move on to the next item on our agenda, which just disappeared from my computer, but I suspect it is the director's report.
No, we have a discussion item.
I beg your pardon, it is a discussion item. Who is introducing the discussion item, Jill?
Jill would be.
I'm happy to do it, Chair Benjamin.
Thank you. I'll recover my agenda. Carry on.
All right, we will buy you a bit of time, but this is really about the Commission's interest in discussing meeting start time in particular, but you will notice that staff broadened the agenda item a little bit to put forth your calendar. And Bridget prepared your calendar going out for several months, and she could, Bridget, it looks great. You're welcome to share the screen if you'd like. We have a couple dates that we think might seem obvious that we would like to cancel the Planning Commission meetings, but we want to confirm them with you. You have your meeting actually lines up this year on Thanksgiving week, and we would like to cancel that meeting. Your second meeting in December, we would also like to skip that one and see you in the new year. Bridget, are you able to put your...
Yes, I will share the dates for this one, and then I'll give you the 2021 in a moment.
Okay, great. And this is there's no rocket science going on here. You're the second and fourth Tuesday, unless we do something very special. We are, I will in the director report let you know what you're going to probably see over the next few meetings.
So are you able to see this? Okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody's on mute, and I just wanted to make sure you can see it.
Yeah, we see it.
We can see it.
Thank you. So those are the most current, and then I'll show the others.
And before we start digging into what's really working and not working, or all the things that we really want to hear about from meeting time, we can share with you that we really haven't heard any public feedback on this one way or the other. The reasons why we did 6 o'clock meetings and tried that for that study session in particular for the land use plan was that we knew the staff presentation was going to be quite long, and we were concerned about starting public comment so late. And so in particular, that was a sensitivity to that. And it was a study session. It wasn't a public hearing. So that was something we tried, and we're happy to talk to you about how that went. But that's really getting this item to you so you can add it around.
Thank you. One question before we open it up for conversation. Jill, can you give me a sense on Planning Commission nights? My sense is sometimes the office at the city is open a little bit late, that you're conducting business beyond 5 o'clock. Can you give me some sense as to the window of time from when you sort of put the last item of public business to bed and when you're ready to begin the Planning Commission meeting? I just want to be sure you and your colleagues get time to eat and kind of put it together. You know what I mean?
We do know what you mean, and we need to have this conversation in the context of what we're doing now, which is with these remote meetings, but also looking ahead eagerly someday to being back with you at the EOC and having a fully staffed City Hall. Somehow it never fails on Tuesdays that things come up all day long, even though I try to keep my calendar open to prepare for Planning Commission meetings. But I often take meetings till 6. So it is hard to start at 6 if we have hearings. I will say that we can adjust if this is something that the commission really wants to try, but it is difficult for us, even at home, to get 100 calories that you're hoping for before the meeting starts. With study sessions, it's a bit easier because we have a little more flexibility about what we present, about the scope of your discussion. The significance is that you don't tend to have a decision-making meeting with a study session. So I'm personally more relaxed about those kinds of meetings. But I am a little bit nervous about moving up too early with public hearings. They also need to be consistent with our noticing. That's another thing. So we want to. I'm going to quit jabbering now. We really do want to hear what's working and not working for the commission. Although we will surmise that I think all of us are happy to have a really successful, well-prepared planning commission packet to give to you that you're able to do your business with and have good public forum, have good deliberation, make decisions, and have it end at a time when we're not all exhausted. So there's that part of it.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that. So let's see. I'd like to, if we could take down the calendar back to the. Thank you. I'd love to hear my colleagues' thoughts. So the floor is open. Who would like to discuss the hours?
I'm happy to start.
Please.
Well, I'll just say, I think there's a number of different perspectives on sort of start time and other things. And this is an age-old question about, which time of a meeting are you going to get the most public engagement? And all of that is thrown up in the air right now with COVID because we don't really know anybody's schedules. And so whether during the daytime or a little bit earlier or later at night, I think regardless, you're going to get folks who are inclined to participate at a certain time, folks who maybe not. So, and I think, the important thing is just that, and this is the important thing for the public, is to understand that we have multiple avenues, multiple venues of engagement and opportunity to provide comments. So the opportunity to submit written comments, the opportunity to reach out to any of us as commissioners, as individuals, the opportunity to reach out to staff, and of course the opportunity to actually come and participate in a live public meeting. So regardless of when a public meeting is scheduled, the public should feel confident that there's multiple venues for them to provide comments and be able to let their comments be known. So with that said, I think what's convenient for us as a commission should probably be last. And I think consideration for what's convenient for staff is really important. And I think recognizing just what the staff is juggling and their ability to provide to be able to make meetings, I think is really critical. My initial assumption was, well, staff would probably like the meeting to be earlier because then that could get done earlier and they can get back to enjoying their family and that sort of thing. But I've also heard that, hey, there's a whole lot of preparation that's needed for this. We have meetings that are going late. And so the 7 o'clock meeting works best for us. I don't care. I'm really agnostic to it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'll be here at 6 o'clock. I'll be here at 7 o'clock. I'll be here at 5 o'clock. Whatever it is, I will try to make my schedule work for it. And so I just want to make sure that our staff has the time that they need to prepare. The public knows that they have multiple opportunities to provide their comments and to be able to participate in it. And that whatever we do is consistent. So I think it's important for the public to know that this meeting is every other Tuesday at this time. And so that's my only interest. And that's my comments. Thanks.
If I can jump on the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Pogar, I saw your hand. Beg your pardon.
I was just going to say one big ditto to what Commissioner Holt just said. So he captured exactly my thoughts. So I just wanted to say that while I could.
So a question with respect to consistency. What I heard in staff's comment and what I've seen sometimes is that occasionally when we know we're going to have a long item, we've been beginning it early. And when we're for example, on these long study sessions where we're not making a decision, if we had those meetings, or maybe there's some other class of things that for some reason we feel like we want to start earlier, if we had a class of those that we identified and said, for these, we may start earlier, but for our average meeting, we start at this other hour. Does that represent an inconsistency? Does that rise to the level of inconsistency that is disturbing? Staff or anybody else?
Commissioner Hernandez has his hand raised. I don't know.
Thank you. I did not see it. Commissioner Hernandez.
Sorry, I'm dealing with dogs who are running in and out of my office excitedly. I think so there's two things, right? One is, what has public feedback been? That's a question for staff. To me, when I know we're going to have a really long study session, I would agree starting earlier. It seems like a constructive way to go. I'd rather go to bed at midnight than 1. So, that's my, but generally speaking, the 7 p.m. start time actually seems to work. You can get dinner on the table, people fed, people settled, and then you can break away to do this. And most of our meetings conclude by 10. So I think that for the public to participate, it's probably not an unreasonable schedule either. So I would be inclined to stick to the 7 p.m. schedule, except when we have these longer sessions, and just make sure that when we do have the longer sessions, we take pains to make sure people know that we're starting at 6 or earlier when that happens. But yeah, I think the 7 p.m. start times actually do work. And the last few meetings that have started at 7, we've had pretty good participation. So.
You're muted, Jimmy.
Yes, and I was pointing at you and verbally. Please take the floor from me before I forget how to use the mute button again.
We had a couple of those very long and very well attended land use planning study sessions. 30 or 40 attendees at a couple of those that began at 6 p.m. And it occurred to me that maybe in this public health crisis, when fewer people are commuting over the hill to work and back, that we might want to have our eyes open to the possibility that maybe 6 p.m. is, in these non-traditional times, just as convenient for members of the public as the traditional time. It's really hard to guess what members of the public would feel about it, and certainly the workability of the schedule for our staff is also extremely important. I agree with Commissioner Holt that our personal preferences should probably be the last factor in determining it. So it would be hard for me to argue much of a change from how we've been doing it without some evidence from the public that made sense for members of the public, and without reassurance from staff that an earlier start time is workable. And I hear your concerns about that, and I certainly understand that. In the absence of any more compelling arguments, the methodology of sticking with a consistent 7 p.m. start, except when we have extremely hairy, long meetings coming up, and utilizing the ability to start those an hour earlier, that seems pretty logical to me.
So thank you, Steve. So question for staff: what is a reasonable standard for consistency in terms of start times? Do we need to identify as a sort of a policy the class of meetings that we think could start earlier, or can we look at something on the agenda and say, oh my gosh, that's going to be along when we need to start earlier, or, help us, guide us about what our prerogatives are before we rise to the level that we are impeding the public's ability to participate because we're shifting too much.
Sure. So I actually think we have the feedback we need to start just checking in with you as we go along, assuming that we're going to have 7 o'clock meetings when we have hearings, and then bringing to your attention what we think may be an unusual circumstance. The Planning Commission bylaws have some leeway. It's mostly around study sessions, around your non-regular meetings. So if we were really going to shift to a new meeting time, we would probably be looking at a bylaw amendment. But with the scope of what you talked about, I think we're okay, and we'll go back and take a look at that. On our side, and I do want to share with you, we discussed this in our staff meeting, and I've been every staff member has a different situation in their home life and their work life, and the culmination of where they live and where they work and how they end up on the little Zoom screen box. So we wanted to make sure that we were really thinking through consistency and what people can count on, in particular if they are have children at home that really they really need to have direct coverage for that, and it's really can be very challenging. So we like 7. We like what you just discussed. We were really happy to do those 6 o'clock meetings for those great big study sessions, and especially good about the public getting a chance to speak earlier in the evening. I get really uncomfortable when that happens so late, and sometimes we have to. You have to have a record, and we present what we present because we need to. So it's a difficult thing to get out of the way of the public discussion, but we do think about that a lot. So I would just suggest that that the input you've given us already is probably enough to work on this for a few months and see if we have anything on the horizon that looks like it should have a little bit more time and an earlier time. Now, to that end, Bridget and I have been talking about just the weight of each meeting. And it's difficult because sometimes projects that you think are ready, you find out at the last minute that they aren't, and you might end up with a very light agenda. Other times we are continuing projects to a date certain, and then we start to stack up an agenda that we have set up with an applicant that we've docked their project on the amazing whiteboard in my office. So it's difficult to balance your agendas, and we're focused on that, and we're gonna really try to give you only one really meaty item or a couple that are a little bit lighter. So tonight we would consider a brand new mixed-use building a meatier item. That said, you had already seen it in study session, so if we had something small to add to it, that might have been okay. But we're targeting as supporting you to have meetings that can probably end around 10 o'clock. And unless there's, a room full of public comment, then you're going to take all of that and have a decision to make about whether or not you have what you need to deliberate and finish your work, or if you're going to need to continue. So continuance is an important tool. It really serves the commission well and the community well, and we're glad that you use it when you do. Staff takes no umbrage when you continue an item where we've had a recommendation. Things come out of the process. That's what it's supposed to do.
Okay, thank you. I will say, I think for those items that get surprisingly long, sometimes our our best and only defense against being stupid is to continue an item till we've recovered our senses. Somehow a little bit of sleep and alertness can bring us to clarity in ways that, pounding out a decision at midnight just can't. The bylaws also give us room to, from time to time, have a meeting. For example, if there's a site that is of interest, we have the flexibility. If someone said, we really need to look at this Isha or that, this hazard or whatever it is, we have the flexibility to convene a meeting under those circumstances at that time, but that's clearly the exception. So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like there's consensus amongst the commission and the staff to carry on with 7 o'clock start times and the flexibility to begin the long agendas earlier. It sounds like it's primarily these heavy duty LCP kind of or study session kind of items. But if you had something meaty, I think I sense from the commission that they would be, happy to, hear it one starting at 6 rather than, hearing it from 6 to 11 and then for an hour 2 weeks later, right? Okay, great. So the good news is I got my agenda back up on a screen and I can see that it's now time for the director's report. So back to you, boss.
Well, goodness. Okay. Thank you. And thanks for that discussion. And thank you for all of your accommodations to staff. We really do appreciate it. All right. So for your next meeting, you do have an item that was continued 2909 Champs. We've been working with the applicant and we are trying very hard to have that ready for you. There are a couple other items that are not quite ready. We'll see if they make the cut or not. You may end up with a late night. November 10th, we are hoping to bring you another mixed-use project. You saw 795 Main Street in a study session mode quite some time ago, and we'd really like to bring that one back. It's been through Architectural Advisory Committee now a couple times, and it is just about ready for you. November 24th, we are suggesting canceling that meeting. If you really want to meet, we'll do it. But we could use a little breather, and we'll be honest about that. We've got a little land use plan burnout going. It doesn't just do that to the people working on it. It has repercussions to everybody else, like Scott, who has all of these projects that he's going to be bringing to you. He has like a standing gig with the Planning Commission right now. So you're going to see lots of.
You must have sent a great send.
Yes. We're almost caught up on your minutes. The transcription from September 8th, I think, is coming soon. So Bridget did great, though, getting 2 sets for you tonight. Thank you for your corrections on those. We appreciate it. City Council. So back to the land use plan. City Council has had 2 hearings on the land use plan. They were September 30th and October 6th. At October 6th, they continued to a date certain of October 20th. So we are prepared to bring them a final, just a couple extra revisions that we are keeping in one complete log for them. So you all can keep up with that. They will get posted Friday night or Saturday morning. And we are prepared for them to adopt if they're ready to do so. We have all the materials prepared for them. We're very much looking forward to it and hope that you've been able to watch through the Facebook feed or the Zoom or the PCTV. You have lots of choices. The same evening, we're going to bring a project to the commission for a fairly, or to council for a fairly simple action. It's an item you saw in 2017. It was the Creekside subdivision. It's been 3 years and its map is close to expiring, and we are going to request an extension because it is not quite ready for final map approval. And I've also been working on negotiations on the affordable housing agreement for that project. And we just need a little more time. It's an important project, and there were a lot of action needs and site planning technicalities, and getting the final map just right is a tricky process. So you'll see that report. It's probably would be a consent calendar item in any other city. It might get pulled here. I don't know, and we'll be happy to discuss it that night. Community Development Director hearing tomorrow. We have 3 administrative items. I think I announced these to you last meeting, but, and hopefully you are receiving our agendas. Good. 433 Grove is an addition. 335 Poplar is also an addition, and 332 Garcia is an accessory dwelling unit. And Scott is the lucky guy who gets to do resolutions for all of those. We're really busy, and every one of us. And this week we happen to have the Architectural Advisory Committee meeting pop up. They are the 3rd Thursday, which happened to align with your 2nd Tuesday. This doesn't usually happen. So we have a lot of activity this week. Bridget put out 3 packets last week. Thank you, Bridget. And the committee is going to look at a single family home. We've been bringing a few single family homes to them under certain circumstances. And this one checks that box. This is 2778 Pullman. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac in the Stolowski-Gonzalez plan development. It's a visual resource area, and the site is a bit visible from Highway 1, and story poles are going up, I understand, tomorrow. So the commission, of course, is welcome to take a little tour and go check out the story poles and take a look at the Architectural Advisory Committee's meeting. If you're interested, you're always welcome to sit in as an attendee. But we thought we should bring it through them before it comes to you. And so that's what's up with the rest of our week. The last thing I have is to let you know that mural that you looked at a meeting back is going to get installed probably tomorrow. So come on downtown. It's at Main and Kelly, kitty corner from Mac Dutra. And that seems like enough.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Jill on the director's report, or comments, discussion? All right. In that case, we'll move to the Planning Commission communication. Does anyone have any Planning Commission communications? Well, as much as I have enjoyed the meeting tonight, it is 8:35. We may be approaching a record if someone wants to make a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Seconded and thirded. I don't think we need a roll call. I think we're done. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, excuse me, before we go, did you need a motion on canceling those meetings?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either.
I heard no objections to the schedule change.
Perfect. Just thought I'd check. I know we're out already. My mistake. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Meeting is now adjourned.
Yep. Take care. Be well.